Welcome to the Guy at the Movies podcast with Joe and Sean. We have a special guest this evening, and I'm going to turn to Mr. Math Teacher Movies himself, Sean, to introduce him.
Thank you, Mr. Guy at the Movies, Joe. So, the guest that I have here is a very, very dear friend from college, who the two of us would get into movie conversations incredibly deep, that the woman that either me or him was courting would be terrified at how much we would be just in movie knowledge, and they would just want to bow out immediately. And we'd forget they're there because we would talk so much about it. Since then, we have been able to always, just stay in contact as if, a beat hasn't changed at all. And recently I've been using his Criterion, which is why you're getting all the weird old movie reviews. But enough from me. Here he is, Kevin.
Yeah, when I found out, hey, hello, thanks for the introduction, Sean.
Kevin, we're very happy to have you. I already enjoy that you disagree with Sean on a lot of things, so that's going to be really good because it's very challenging sometimes for me to hold it together,
Mm-hmm.
And so we have a pretty packed schedule of, or I guess outline of things to talk about tonight, and that's leading up to our first discussion of Scream Watch. And not only was it Sean's first time watching Scream in preparation for this, but it was Kevin's first time watching Scream. So this is going to be a fun discussion. So I'm looking forward to that. But usually we would dive into what we've been watching, but we've all been watching a ton of movies. And because we have a lot of news we want to get to, we're just going to skip over that. And if we have time at the end, we'll kind of come back to kind of what our biggest takeaways were from the films we watched recently. I don't know that there were too many great ones that I've watched, but except for that documentary. That was a good one.
Oh, yeah. But that was like a true crime Netflix. We'll bring that up.
That's a completely side subject on a rant right now. I'm actually going to go on the rant. I feel bad saying that a documentary based on true crime. Oh, that was a great documentary. And I'm like, yeah. And 3 people are dead, like families torn apart. But thank you for entertaining me with the story. I actually feel really bad about that.
Well, that's the Aziz Ansari joke where he just talked about the Michael Jackson documentary, and it's like, did you see that Michael Jackson documentary? It was amazing. It was all about an in-depth detail about how those 2 kids were raped. And it's just, oh wait, we don't want to. No, please no.
Yeah, there's something weird about that. All right, let's jump into the news. We're going to start with movies on the move, where there are a ton of movies that have relocated, and we'll talk about probably the reason why coming up. But I'm going to run through this list right here instead of focusing on each one. So No Time to Die moved from November 2020 to April 21. Dune from December 2020 to 2020 to October 21. Jurassic World Dominion, June 2021 to June 2022. Escape Room 2 from December 20. I didn't even know that was coming out. To an unknown date. It hasn't been placed back on the schedule. The Batman was moved again from October 21 to March 22. The Flash from June 22 to November 22. Shazam 2 from November 22 to June 23, which is nuts. Black Adam from December 21st or December of 21 to undated, not even dated anymore. And that was their biggest thing at DC fandom, arguably, outside of Batman. And Greenland is going to VOD, so pour one out.
Not Greenland.
Pour one out for Mr. Gerard Butler there. And then The Witches is going to HBO Max on October 23rd, which I'm actually kind of interested in that because the first one freaked me out as a kid. And then 2 positives, if there are any, is that Monster Hunter with Mila Jovovich has moved from April 21st to December of 2020, which hopefully theaters are around. And The Matrix 4, which was moved back to April 2022 last time we spoke about it, has been moved back up to December 2021. What is going on? We know
I feel so bad because I just imagine right now Christopher Nolan counting a very low amount of money being like, wait, shit, we could move movies? Like, just I feel terrible. I think about when based on the releases we're getting this week in theaters, I think that releasing a movie in theaters now is kind of like the dumping ground, like January or February. But
it's just all the time now.
Yeah, pretty much. It's just like, oh, just right now because no one's going to see it. But thank God for Greenland. I mean, I'm going to be able to see that in the comfort of my own home the way I was hoping to.
I think I'm going to enjoy it. Kevin, what's going on? Are you a big movie goer? Do you go to the movies a lot?
Sean's got me beat on that by far, but here's why. I was thinking that question might be come up today, and I was like, I got to defend myself. I live in Astoria in New York City, and if the average time or the average, whenever I go, it's like $20, $22 to see a movie in theaters. And Sean, no offense, but I think he's getting like the $5 matinees and stuff like that. So like, I don't pirate as much as I used to, but I was definitely like, when Movie Pass kind of crumbled, that was the last time that I was like really getting into theaters.
Yeah,
it is true. No. It is true. It's cheaper movies, and I think between me and Kevin, I probably drive by a lot more Trump signs in order to get to the theater. It shows you I'm in a bit more of a suburbia and smaller tickets there.
I can't help but think that like those of us who took advantage of Movie Pass are part of the death of theaters because there were so many movies that I saw on that thing.
God. I was like, "Are you sure that you want to do this?" And then really took him up on the offer.
It wasn't even targeting me for a while.
Oh, nice.
What'd you say, Sean?
Fiance Sam is working on the case, and because she's a paralegal at a law firm, and she has turned to me several times while she's looking over all the notes, and she's like, "You physically crippled Movie Pass. Like you did this.
This is all because of you." Well, look, so we know part of the reason all of this is happening. There were two stories that came out in the past week. One is that filmmakers have called on Congress to help theaters. So in the upcoming stimulus talks, which as of an hour ago will not be happening until after November 3rd, a bunch of directors banded together and said theaters need your help. So they're asking that in the next stimulus package that hopefully is forthcoming at some point from the government, that they will help theaters a little bit in this time where they don't really have a product to put out there. Mm-hmm. We see that kind of coming to fruition with, I think it was late Friday night or Saturday night, news broke that Regal Cinemas and Cinema World, which is the owner of it worldwide, was going to be shutting down its theaters for the foreseeable future. And that came to fruition later on in the weekend where they made it official. One of the quotes that I don't want to say I really liked, but it made sense, was that a produce store can't be successful if they don't have new produce to put out there and sell. And that's kind of how the movie theaters have been operating recently. They've been hoping for some attention and some visitation from those who are interested in classic films. That's why Hocus Pocus was number 2 at the box office this weekend. Nice. But other theaters are apparently theater chains in the U.S. are not following suit. AMC and Cinemark said that they're going to remain open, while Odeon overseas is going to be shutting down during the week and only opening on the weekends. Kevin, do you think this is a good move?
This is tough because the reason is safety, right? Like the reason we're so hurt right now and that theaters are so hurt is the same reason Sean and I are feeling anxiety about going back to working in schools. Is the same reason that so many people out there are unsure of what the future is holding right now, right? And that's tough to bank on and bet on. It breaks my heart to think that chains are closing down and it's going to, take away access for people because while it's easy, if one place closes down in New York, there's a slew of other places I'll be able to go to. There's some kid in the middle of Iowa, right? Or where I was growing up in upstate New York, where like I had one movie theater, I could have 2, right? In either direction. But like,
sure.
If one of them goes, like that changes your whole landscape of seeing movies. And not to mention, the ripple effects that this is going to have on the industry and the way that it's going to pay people out. And I'm terrified.
Yeah, it's a big hit for them. And Sean, you don't go to a chain, if I'm remembering correctly. You go to a local theater, don't you?
Well, I did until that local theater closed.
There you go.
Now I'll be going to a chain. And, I'm lucky enough, it'll be a couple of towns over. But right now I'll be able to go to that chain when things open up again. I think that, just to springboard off of, Kevin's situation is that, movies can't really exist without a theater. Yes, we've been told now we can watch them on Netflix, and they are fine on Netflix, and you can enjoy them on Netflix. But I mean, you think about your greatest movie moments, not the best movies, but the greatest movie moments you had, they were when you were sitting in a theater. And so I think that what I keep saying to myself is that the theater industry is going to crumble very, very quickly soon, but just based on this news through this week. And that's the bad news. The good news is there's going to be some building back up. And this building back up might involve no longer $20 tickets, or it might involve, a little bit, better viewing experience, or, they were working on that already. But let's face it, the movie theater industry was not good before this. I mean, I was in a theater with like 3 people pretty much every time. Mm-hmm. So while, theaters are necessary, something had to change already. So I think this is like this, sign from the universe that things are going to like crumble down and hopefully build. That's my over dramatic thing where it's like the entire industry is going to crumble down. I don't think that's exactly going to happen, but I think there could be something new that comes from that.
Well, we talked about this a while ago too, I think, right? That every industry kind of needs to reinvent itself at some point. And the theater industry has had to do that for a long, long time. And this just finally pushed it down the road. And here we are with, the Regal shutting down while their competition says they're staying open. What's interesting about that is that AMC stateside has had to restructure their debt and everything already to remain open. So the fact that they're going to try to power through with, Despicable Me for $5 is surprising to me. But I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. I worry that we're going to see like an Amazon swoop in and start buying up some of the theaters. They were already rumored to be in discussions with AMC back in August, maybe it was. Mm-hmm. But I wonder if we're going to see like, kind of some of those smaller chains go out, some of the smaller theaters go out, and then we're just going to be beholden to like an Amazon theater and a Netflix theater or something.
Yeah. And Netflix was literally doing that last year. They bought up some boutique cinema in New York City that was one of like a landmark, right? And
yeah.
Do you remember the name exactly?
El Capitan, I think it was.
I think so. And it's the Netflix theater now. Like they could just screen A Marriage Story, which they did. They ran it for like, for your consideration use. And it makes me think of one of my main worries about it is like what you just said with all of the streaming services fighting for like, okay, this is our time to like, really shine. No disparities to the streaming services that I watch all the time, but they are there. I don't know if Netflix is a cinephile at heart, right? And one of the things that really makes me mad is that like with Twitter, how like Netflix has been able to put on this like persona with their Twitter of like, OMG, you guys, what is going to be the best spookster horror movie to watch tonight? And you're like, you are a company that is making billions. Chill, you're not a human, right? But the other flip of that is they're a company, right? And so they're going to be wanting to put out what's hot right now, what's going to make money for the least amount of money probably that they can could get eyes on screen and whatever their algorithm is that I don't really know, right? And
the big Halloween film for Netflix is going to be Hubie Halloween, Adam Sandler's big follow-up to Uncut Gems, hitting streamers on Wednesday.
I don't know about Hubie that I'm excited.
Come on.
Adam Sandler told us when he got snubbed at the Oscars, he said, the next movie I make is going to be the worst one of all time. So I'm so excited for Hubie.
It's going to be great. I think it looks hysterical. I'm in. Let's do it.
I don't think I watched the trailer for it.
It's the whole movie. But yeah, I think that we're going to see, and maybe that's a little bit of the snob in me, right? You don't need, there's going to be your neons that still exist. You're still going to have your A24s, but that makes me sound really snobby. I have my own things to say about A24. Invite me back on another podcast and I'll talk about that sometime. But as I wear an A24 shirt.
Yeah, this is your A24 up right now with a lighthouse shirt.
Yeah, it's cool. But yeah, I worry about like their quality control and what it's going to be like going forward.
Yeah, I think you're totally right with that. And then we're also, there's the talk of are those mid-level films and even some of the indie films that I don't know if you consider indie films like that mid-level or more so just, I guess that's a whole nother level, right? Indie. Mid-level or like those Adam Sandler throwaway comedies that when they do hit theaters and stuff like that. Are we not going to see them anymore? And is it just going to be the big blockbusters? And I think that's what we may be looking at, where those lower cost films are going to be going straight to streaming or VOD. And say what you will about the terrible movie that was Milan on Disney Plus. Disney Plus proved that they can be successful with selling a movie for premiere access for $30. So it's going to be interesting. Anything else, Sean?
I just also want to say, after all of this movie theater industry stuff, I'm very grateful that all of these films got pushed back. Because I was kind of doing a pros and cons list with Dune. I was like, I want to be the first to see Dune. I want to see the amazing colors. And the con was die. And I want to live. It was a very tricky thing for me. And so I think it was kind of responsible that this sort of avalanche of delayed films started to happen. And, shout out to, Kevin and I have had our arguments about the Fast and the Furious franchise. But shout out to F9 for in March going yep, next summer. We're just going. It's easy.
Because they're all about family to begin with, and they know that you got to protect that family and keep them safe. And I'm part of that family, and I thank Dom and crew and Han for making sure we'll be able to see it safely.
Well, and that is one movie I actually missed. That did get pushed back an additional month. So I think it's coming out in May of next year now. So
MDW, baby.
So watch out. Hey, on a different level, it's going to be exciting for people like us that love going to movies and watching movies, because there's going to be a ton of movies coming out and a ton of big movies. But I think what you're starting to see with some of these that are getting pushed back to later 2022 or even 2023 is you don't want studios cannibalizing themselves. And unfortunately, I think that's where we're going to get more delays in the future, because they want to give long run times in theaters to some of these big blockbusters that need to make the money back. You see that with Tenet. I think the report tonight was that it's made $300 million internationally, and it still has $100 million to go before it breaks even. So it's gonna be a crazy ride for the theaters. I'm really kind of nervous about it, but I'm excited to see where they come out the other end.
Yeah, that blew my mind looking at the box office mojo for Tenet, where the domestic was dwarfed by the international in such a way that it had just been I'm not processing numbers correctly right now, right? But it's that thing made zero money here. That's tough.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. It's pretty crazy. Well, let's move on to some more positive news. We'll get into some of the comic book stuff. We have we try to group all this stuff together, and there was a decent amount of it coming out in the past couple of weeks, or past week, I should say. Let's start with Billy Crudup. Crudup, who played Ezra Miller's father in Justice League, is in talks to return for The Flash, which is really no surprise if you're familiar with the Flash story. And his whole mission to get his father out. And I think we're going to see more of the father in Zack Snyder's Justice League next year. But we'll see. Kevin, thoughts on that one?
I like Billy Crudup. I think the Flash is great. That one doesn't really move my meter too much. I think the Flash, what they're starting to brew up with him in the future in the DC is really exciting, because if they're going to bring in Flashpoint, and if they're going to use Justice League, the Snyder Cut, retooled as a really good entry point for Flashpoint, then it'll feel I feel like that's going to pump up the fans who have been pushing the Snyder Cut. I don't know about you, but there's been I feel like a lot of tension with this one, where if you've been rooting for the Snyder Cut before it comes out, I feel like you're all right, I'm ready to like this thing no matter what. I've been championing, I will die on this hill. And so you're kind of tense, I hope it's good. Right? And Snyder
can confirm.
Ooh, Snyder can go either way. And so I'm excited that it seems like they're putting the pieces in for that, right? And Billy Crudup is great. If he has a big blue penis on screen, more power. That'd be great.
Watchmen reference.
Staying in the DC.
The Flash is the one that goes fast, right?
Oh, God. Yeah. Okay, next story.
All right. So I mean, personally, I love Billy Crudup. He recently won an Emmy for The Morning Show, which, if you're going to only award one thing, and I mean one thing from that show, let it be Billy Crudup. he was awesome. And he's just like, and I remember seeing him in Justice League on a plane, I think back from Spain, rhymes. And I was just kind of like, hey, Billy Crudup, and then never seeing him again. And I was kind of like, what was the point? He's not like an unknown, I guess he's kind of an unknown character actor, but it's Billy Crudup. He's a son in Big Fish. He's big. Like, come on.
I think Billy Crudup is pretty well known. He was like the main guy in that. He was the Golden God, and then he jumped off the roof, right?
Oh,
he was incredible in. I'm gonna forget the name, and I can't remember it now. So never mind. It's a very tender love story about a mom trying to raise her son with a bunch of women. Greta Gerwig is in it. Help me out.
20th Century Women. Amazing.
Yeah, he was incredible in 20th Century Women, a film that made me cry many times. I think Crudup is like Super Bowl now.
Yeah, I think he was a victim of the cutting room floor for Justice League, so hopefully we'll see a little bit more of him. I do think that was a setup for potentially wanting to get him back for the Flash movie, because that's kind of what Flashpoint focuses on a lot too, is the family relationships and stuff like that. So if that's where they're going, I wonder if they're going to rope in some stuff with the father there. Yeah. Other Warner Brothers news here regarding comics is that they are going to adapt a little-known comic that hasn't been running for too long, I don't believe, but it's called Black. So it's a comic series that explores a world where only Black people have superpowers. So it's becoming a film from Studio 8 and Warner Brothers. And essentially, the story is one young man who survives a violent event realizes that he is part of these extraordinary people, but a secret consortium wants to control these abilities and those who possess them. And he soon finds himself at the center of a war over the future of mankind itself. Really cool story. A couple of the articles I read said that they worry that that's going to be a little problematic in this climate.
They worry. Yeah. Oh, no.
Worry.
That's going to bring us so much press.
Yeah.
And attention. We don't want attention on our movie.
We're worried about how controversial this is going to be. Click this link.
Yeah.
To be clear, it wasn't Warner Brothers that was saying that. It was other sites and podcasts. But
it's Ben Shapiro's news site, like already grinding their axe. Like,
yeah. His Google alert.
Sorry, I was trying to keep it political on the show. I don't know what our stance is here.
We try to avoid it, but
we try, but it comes out. I look forward for this to get like 0 stars, like 200 times from users before it's released. Just,
yeah.
I'm feeling real Last of Us 2 vibes on this movie.
I'm looking forward to it. I think I'm excited to see new superheroes that I'm not familiar with. I'm familiar with the big Marvel ones. I'm familiar with the big DC ones and some other side projects. But when it comes to, newer or I guess offbeat stories, I haven't been too, embedded in them. So I'm excited to see what comes of that. Another example of that is Miss Marvel, which is getting a Disney Plus show, but is one of the four or five characters that were announced that will be making their way into the MCU films at some point. They found their Miss Marvel in casting newcomer Iman Vellani. And this will be the first Muslim superhero for the studio, which obviously represents a direction of Marvel trying to diversify. And we talked about this a little bit, Sean, when we talked about the She-Hulk casting and everything as well, and maybe other casting that I'm trying to recall. But the diversification, when you think of the Avengers, you're thinking of all white people. And now they're taking a different direction.
Very cool.
I mean, I love this, obviously, and I love that they're going with an unknown as well, because I think we talked about this the other day with another Black person who was casted. I can't remember his name right now. But it was just great that it was someone that wasn't as
the guy from The Invisible Man. I can't remember his name. I know who you're talking about, though. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. And it was just great that they just didn't decide to go with let's just cast Michael B. Jordan again, which, by the way, cast him in everything. That's great. And I think with this, to cast another unknown is to have another diverse actor or actress become a star. And I think that might be the most important thing about the surrounding this. I don't know much about Miss Marvel, but I love that the idea that it's a Disney Plus series and then it's going to be leaked into the shows, because Marvel just wants to make things tougher on themselves. They just did the impossible for 10 years. Now they're like, let's put shows involved and let's see what that is.
Kevin, any familiarity with Miss Marvel?
Kamala Khan, as she's formerly, or better known as in Jersey, where she grows up. It's a newer take on the Ms. Marvel thing, and she's pretty awesome. I also, unfortunately, bought Avengers, the video game, day one. Not panning out the way I would like it to, and you spend a lot of time playing as her. Didn't hate it. She had some cool powers, but I bought an Iron Man game, and I got a big old stretchy fist game. That's her ability. She's what she calls a polymorph. She can make her body stretch into any kind of thing. I think it's really awesome. I'm hyped that they're really pushing Ms. Marvel, I think, and making that kind of the future going forward. Because there was in the comics themselves, Marvel had that kind of push probably maybe a decade ago, way too late, whenever it was, where they were like, okay, we're gonna have an Asian guy be the Hulk, and also we're gonna like mix up a bunch of our main properties and have some fun with it in a good way. I think Miles Morales really led the charge on that in a cool way. And the last thing, just the elephant of it too, is that I'm not sure if we could not cast an unknown, unfortunately, for this role, because how many teenage Muslim girl stars do we have right now in Hollywood, right? And so no matter what, I think you're going to get somebody new and fresh, and I think it's really exciting, and I hope it's not a tokenistic approach to it where it's like they hold it up and it's like, look, we did it. Black Panther from New Jersey now, right? And it's like, okay, chill, right? I think they're going to actually push forward to something more substantive and whole and good. I'm excited for that.
I hope so, because we do run the risk of that tokenism, so to speak, because it is Disney, and Disney is known to do that with minorities. So hopefully they take a different direction. Question in the chat here, Kevin, you probably can answer this. Does Miss Marvel become?
Oh my gosh!
Does Miss Marvel become Captain Marvel?
Oh, are they testing me right now? Is that what this is? Or because
Kevin, before you go further, my fiance is the one that asked.
Oh, okay, cool. Sam, be careful. So it's tricky. You ask a very tricky question because it's yes and no. I think Carol Danvers is related to Kamala Khan, not relate like physically, but like psychically in a way where the same way that Danvers got her powers, I think, is the way that Khan got her powers for a new generation.
Sam says, be nice to me.
I saw that. This is really cool functionality here.
Did they also, or didn't they also, I don't know what I'm trying to say here. I just like zoned out completely. Didn't they also kind of allude to Kamala Khan or a Captain Marvel type, Miss Marvel type character in the Captain Marvel movie with her friend's young girl? That's terrible. I'm forgetting a little bit.
Yes and no. So apparently I was watching some like 57 Easter eggs you missed about the MCU movies, like new rock stars probably. And it was like she's actually going to go on and be another character, possibly starting Sword, which I don't know how much time you got, but like Sword goes with Shield. It's probably where they're thinking Nick Fury is right now at the end of Captain Marvel. You know, remember when he was on a beach and then it was a holodeck, right?
Yep.
And he's in space. That's, I think, supposed to be the Sword spaceship or whatever, which is like the last thing Tony Stark does with his like brain trust is like set up this like anti-shield, literally, defense system kind of.
Hey, we need to have you back for like a whole comic book, conversation.
Way nerdier than I thought. Dang.
Hey, I'm excited to see where they go with that. I think they did drop some hints in some of the past few movies or the later movies of the MCU where they're going in the future. We're probably going to get the Skrulls and the Kree at some point, like Secret pushing Invasion. That story a little bit more. Exactly, Secret Invasion storyline. But we'll see where that goes. It should be an electrifying future, just as this electrifying news that Jamie Foxx will reprise his role as Electro.
Well done.
Thank you.
Well
that
done.
Was wonderful, right? So Jamie Foxx last played Electro in the Andrew Garfield Amazing Spider-Man 2, which 75% of people, maybe even more, despise, and then 20% of people are willing to go to battle for. I don't really quite get it. I didn't think it was a good movie. I don't know that I really remember Jamie Foxx's performance in it, but the rumor with all of this is that this goes further, or this furthers the multiverse angle that the MCU has taken. But the difference here is that the MCU is kind of separate from the Sony Pictures universe of Marvel characters. Spunk.
What's the opposite of rolling off the tongue?
Right.
Tripping out your lips.
Blabbering. So I'm going to go to Kevin for this one to start again because it is up your alley with the comic book angle, and then we'll go to Sean with his fondest memories of Electro.
I will say The Amazing Spider-Man 2 is the worst Spider-Man sequel out of the 3 Spider-Man sequels that there are, right? And Electro is a big reason why that sucks, in my opinion. I just realized also this is live. I should use my radio voice. So, yeah. I would say that I'm very excited for the multiverse, and I think that Electro definitely puts that out because it is from the Andrew Garfield time, right? And so I think what's exciting is there was a lot of tension last year of will they, won't they extend their contract, right? And Sony was like, we're taking it away. And Marvel was like, that would be the dumbest thing you could possibly do. All of your emails got leaked. We know we're the only place making you money right now. Let's keep making you money. And so they figured out that money was good, and they're keeping that going. And I think now we're going to see much more bleed over, because you ready for this little piece? We're getting Electro in Spider-Man, whatever the Tom Holland universe is, correct? That's what we're saying. But if you saw the Morbius trailer.
I knew you were going there.
I blocked it out of my mind because Jared Leto bad, and so at the end of the Morbius trailer, for eagle-eyed fans, spoiler warning if you want to watch Morbius later, is that Vulture is in that. Who we're seeing a reprise of Batman. Michael Keaton's character, right? Michael Keaton, by the way, all about the multiverses lately because he's also reprising his role as Batman in whatever the Batman multiverse movie is going to be. So. Or I'm getting ahead of myself there. But I think we're seeing some actual crossover from Sony and Marvel in a really interesting way where they're like, hey, let's keep making money. Let's play with these IPs in a way that are going to get people talking about it on their movie blogs before this movie, right? Like, I wasn't so excited about a third Spider-Man, but if you say that Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield are going to be there too, I'm like, okay, let me see what's going on.
Which is where I thought you were going to go with the Morbius piece, is that there also is a poster of Spider-Man on the wall in one of the scenes of the trailer, and it is Tobey Maguire's. I think it's Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man. So there clearly is something going on there. There's a larger, universe at play.
And Sam Raimi took over for the Doctor Strange direction, right? Like he's directing in the mouth of the multiverse of madness or whatever that's called. Like I think
that's the multiverse of madness, not the mouth of the multiverse.
There we go. In the Mouth of Madness is another great movie. Sorry, but that's going to bring in Tobey Maguire, I think, way more to know that Raimi's back around it and probably planting seeds in some cool way.
Yeah. Sean, does this excite you at all? Are you excited to see where this is going?
The problem with me on this one is that I really just for some reason, not even actively, but did not see either Andrew Garfield Spider-Man movie. And I don't know if it was just a weird time for me. I don't know if I just wasn't in the theaters that time, but it just, for some reason, those just skipped right by me. And everyone told me, I was like, should I go see those? They're like, no. And I was like, okay, cool. So I'm going to avoid those. And I would love to see, a villain get another chance in another type of movie and with another direction. I don't know if Jamie Foxx is one of those ones that's like, I had another way to play this character. I don't think he's really that in his depth. But on the other hand, he could have some fun with it in a different setting. So I welcome it from a purely movie standpoint. From a comic book thing, I don't know what you guys are talking about, but there we go. That's my piece.
And one other thing to just reference in terms of what they're building, and sorry, I went off on a mind tangent here, but they're also building towards a Sinister Six with Vulture and all that too. And I forgot that Electro is part of the original Sinister Six,
as is Mysterio, right?
As is Mysterio, and then we're getting a Craven the Hunter movie in the future,
and we got Shocker in the last Spider-Man too, who's awesome.
Yeah, good point. I forgot he was there. Yeah, so they're definitely building up to
Joaquin,
the villains.
Something.
Who? Which one?
Sorry, I'm interrupting, but the guy who played Shocker, Joaquin something. I forgot his last name. Anyway,
I can't remember.
Great. But yeah, it's weird that it's so scattered though, right? And that they're gonna take these pieces across two different companies and kind of seemingly collect them back in another way.
Do you know what I like to think happened? I think Kevin Feige got together with like one of the Sony reps or whoever's heading the spunk for Sony. And I think they like had coffee and Feige was like, fine, here you go. And like drew like a map on a napkin of like, here's where you need to hit. Don't talk to me. Because, you know, where is this all coming from them, right? Like Sony had no idea what to do with its characters for how long. And now all of a sudden, I mean, I'm glad. I'm happy that Feige's involved. And hopefully we continue to get good films because I think that the Spider-Man films with Tom Holland have been pretty good in my eyes.
Yeah.
So Agreed. We'll see. Speaking of Mysterio, though, and moving out of the comic book realm, Jake Gyllenhaal and Oscar Isaac are teaming up for Francis and the Godfather, which is a film coming up from Barry Levinson that follows the behind-the-scenes battles between director Francis Ford Coppola and producer Robert Evans, of course, with The Godfather. And people describe this as a legendary battle and a legendary back and forth. Sean, I know you're excited about this news. I love Jake Gyllenhaal as an actor, and I'm very excited about more Oscar Isaac. So.
I mean, Jake Gyllenhaal as an actor, of course, amazing. He's going to be playing sort of a larger-than-life producer in Robert Evans, which just sounds like a great camp role that he can have. Oscar Isaac as Francis Ford Coppola is a stunning casting because I'm trying to even think about what Coppola looked like then.
I think he could pull it off big time. Just get a beard and like the scraggle hair.
Is it the same kind of like, did he look that way in the 70s? The same he does now, kind of like with the white hair and everything, but
darker, probably
a little darker. But I mean, I look at this and then I also worry about this because first of all, I love this. I'm going to be seeing it immediately. I'm so excited for it. Barry Levinson, a bit of a poppy director at times. Diner's amazing. But then you have things like Rain Man and then he did The Natural, which great movies, but they're a little bit too, vanilla, I think sometimes.
But also like Good Morning Vietnam and Wag the Dog. And
I forgot about those two.
I just looked it up real quick.
He's big with the comedies. And so this is an interesting like turn he's taking because he loves his comedies. I mean, The Natural even has like a bouncy thing to it. But I look at this and this is right now the third film about films that's like basically being released in the next couple of years. We have Mank coming out this year. We have the movie that's going to be talking about Chinatown being made, directed by Ben Affleck. And then we have this movie coming out. And so it just seems like, wow, we are just loving movies being made about movies. And will this get a little bit like lost in the shuffle? I think it's going to be awesome. I'm excited, but I always have those kind of worries. That was my first thought.
Yeah, I'm with you. Kevin, how about you? Are you in the same kind of boat? I will just point out real quick too that Barry Levinson directed one of my favorite underrated comedies starring the late Robin Williams, Man of the Year. I don't know if you've ever seen that, but I love that movie.
Ones, right? Or is that Best Father in Brooklyn or something? And
that's World's Greatest Dad. That one.
Okay, yeah. There's a couple of titles that I get confused.
You have a lot of Williamses in your head right now.
Yeah, for sure. Levinson's all over the place. I'm excited. One thing that has me excited about it is that when we're popping out his movies, right? His career spans so far back that it's not going to be Levinson. It's not going to be like if like Ari Aster does it and he's like, I read this great book and I'm really passionate about this project. He probably has had like firsthand experience himself in there, right? And knows these people. I'm talking out of my butt right now, of course, but like he could bring something to it that would probably be a little bit more nuanced, perhaps in a cool way. And I just love those two. I think Jake Gyllenhaal is one of the most exciting actors today. He just picks the coolest stuff. And two of those three movies you said, Sean, I'm excited for. I've never heard of this one before. I'm excited for this, just of the casting alone. And Mank is going to be the next Fincher movie, right?
Yes.
So I'll be there. Like, yeah.
Cool. I love the idea of Ari Aster doing this, and but like Ari Aster would do it where like three of his friends commit suicide, but also kill their entire family, and then all of their children die as well. The guy loves a tragedy. I mean, it's kind of scary.
He hates your family.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. I think it's going to be good. Like I said, Jake Gyllenhaal, I agree. I think is one of the best actors out there. He also is, fun story, when I was younger in grad school and my friend and I would go out on like online dates and stuff, we had a list of who would play us in a Lifetime movie of ourselves. And I've always said Jake Gyllenhaal for me.
I like it.
Yeah. So,
I would choose that too, just so I could meet him,
Well, yeah, exactly right. Yeah. So we'll get him on the pod, future guest of the podcast here,
Perfect.
Jake Gyllenhaal. That's not true.
He's listening.
He's listening, of course. I'll send it to him. But hey, we are also getting some more exciting films coming out of Warner Brothers Animation, the Warner Animation Group, and it's another universe. We are getting an animated Dr. Seuss cinematic universe. We're just going to touch on this because I don't really want to talk about it, but we're getting another Back to Basics Cat in the Hat. We're getting an original sequel to Cat in the Hat titled Thing 1 and Thing 2. And then we're also getting a J.J. Abrams produced Oh, the Places You'll Go. Sean, J.J. Abrams is producing an animated Dr. Seuss movie. How excited are you?
Here are my thoughts. Read the fucking books.
Oh, the places you'll go and never see because there's way too many lens flares.
It just cracks me up that when he made that overall agreement with Warner Brothers to develop properties for them and like especially HBO Max, it was like, you're going to do Justice League Dark and maybe you'll develop the Cloverfield universe. And do you want to do an animated Oh, the Places You'll Go?
Yeah, just throw that in.
What was that conversation like?
Oh, God.
I think like starting your own IP universe is to the 2020s and like a few years ago as to what like 3D was a decade ago or something, where so many films are putting it on. You're like, please don't. You're just exist on your own. And you're like, no, if we're going to reboot The Mummy, we're also rebooting all the other ones, right? And so now we can't have any nice things because it either is you start with the universe and you're like, the first movie is so convoluted and filled with all these other, you're going to have to know this for 3 sequels from now. And this is a storyline we're planting for 12 from now, right? Like everybody saw Marvel, which took over a decade to build. I don't know how long, a long time to build, right? To get where they were. And they're like, great. Can we do that in 6 months? And they're like, sure, why not? We'll get J.J. Abrams on board. And then it's going to be hot garbage.
Or you could try to claw your way out of that and be successful like DC is working on right now. They're like, oh, we started there, it didn't work.
They're doing it by like just saying, no, we're going to make every movie its own standalone wild thing. And that's when people are like, cool, we're tired of everything having to tie in. We need just some popcorn fare. And DC's like, we got you now. And I really appreciate where they went with that.
I do think that with Marvel, I was thinking about Far From Home, and Far From Home when they would go back, a little bit of spoiler, but there were a lot of, Iron Man's original character and like minor characters that were popping back up, and people are like, "Oh yeah, look who it is!" I'm like, "Who is it?" I don't remember that far back.
Yeah, right.
So that one. But if you're going to be successful with building a universe like this, I think an animated kids universe is probably pretty solid. I imagine they're going to be on HBO Max. I don't imagine many of them are going to blow up in theaters.
That's a great cynical point, right? Is like, oh, the parents aren't going to be paying attention. It's the kids who are being like, this ties into something now. And like, so they'll drive in. The parents will pay the money for it. That's cool.
And from what I was reading, and we're kind of spending a lot more time on this one than I thought, but I will take full responsibility for that. Apparently, it's not like they're going to cross over. Like you're not going to get like the Lorax fighting with Thing 1, but they are apparently just like you're aesthetically and stuff. You're going to be able to tell that they're in the same universe, and it's like the world of Dr. Seuss.
That's even worse. It's like just do your own thing, make movies, and if they're bad, we can talk about why they're bad. That's what I like. I don't the Kevin Feige, like everything's got to be the same. I think a lot of studios are doing that now where it's like, just make your own weird stuff. I want it weird. Sean's
Googling right now when Oh, the Places You'll Go comes out because he's.
I'm getting in the first copy of the screenplay, and it is 1 page long. Yeah, because it's I'm not going to get too angry about this, but it's a rhyming couplet. If the Cat in the Hat left the messy house and then he went on to start a restaurant where he's going to serve green eggs and ham, like that's something. Okay, that's something I can get behind. Cat in the Hat's kind of the Tony Stark kind of guy where he like the first movie is him sort of fashioning the hat, and it's like the Silvestri store comes on and he like puts it on, and that's how he manages to do this stuff. I'm in for. I would actually watch that. Let's connect it like that. But no, you're going to create like animated movies that are going to have like the same coloring. Like what's this?
But then a pandemic hits and the restaurant goes down and the Cat in the Hat's like snorting coke in the back alley or something. And some creature comes by and drops a copy of Oh, the Places You'll Go. And J.J. Abrams sends them to space for Star Trek 4. I see it happening.
They're forced to dine outside in the green eggs and ham restaurant. And therefore they have to cut down a few trees in a certain area. Lorax gets pissed. He comes up running. That's going to be the bunch of Spider-Man villains are going to show up then, and let's go.
Then in come the turtle Nazis.
Yeah. And that's also Cloverfield 4.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it turns out to all be Cloverfield 4.
That's a deep cut Yertle the Turtle reference for all your fans out there.
I was thinking that was it, but it scared me for a second.
Oh my God. All right, so let's move on. There's, in addition to some of the horror comedies that we have coming out soon, I think Freaky is still scheduled for November 13th, I believe, which is kind of like a Freaky Friday, but like, what if you switch bodies with a serial killer? I'm kind of into that. I'm excited for it.
Wait, I'm going to get Kevin's reaction right now. The serial killer played by Vince Vaughn. Yeah. Okay.
All right. Okay. I'm in. Is he acting? Is he like? Who knows? Vince Vaughn. I've never watched True Detective, so I haven't gotten the Vaughnaissance really. I just have seen.
You're not missed. That's
my
one.
last Vince Vaughn was like Fred Claus or something, and so like
anything but the True Detective season.
Well, we're getting another horror comedy that has a pretty solid cast, I would say. But it essentially is about a bunch of internet influencers who head to a billionaire's house only to end up in a vampire's lair. And then they have to rely on another vampire and gamer to get them out. It's called Slayers, and it's Abigail Breslin, Thomas Jane, and Malin Ackerman. Thomas Jane's interesting in there. Abigail Breslin I like, but did not like her in Zombieland 2. I liked her more in Zombieland 1, but I think, hey, it could be fun.
You said I love influencers, and then you listed 3 people who are like, no offense to these people, but 30 plus probably, right? Like influencers, I'm feeling like a bunch of dumb 17-year-olds are going to be like, oh my God, I'm in this haunted house.
You know Breslin's playing like 17, even though she is.
I know, unfortunately.
They're going to do that to her.
Wasn't she
Someday,
in that?
Joey King will take the crown from her and she'll be like, now I am the perennial 12-year-old.
Wasn't she in that Scream Queens? Was Abigail Breslin in that? Or am I thinking? I don't know.
There's another one who's always played young that was in that one too. If she was
Emma Roberts.
Yeah.
Yeah. So horror comedies, though, I mean, it's tough with those because you don't often get an intelligent horror comedy. The most recent one I would say in my eyes would be Ready or Not. And I don't even know if that leans too far into horror. But I think that was a solid play on your expectations. But then I think of like horror movies run the gamut. Just go to like the Deaths of Shudder and you'll see, the Zombievers of the world. But Sean, what are your thoughts on that?
This one, I just think is going to just be too high and mighty, where it's just going to be like, oh, Instagram is terrible, phones are terrible, influencing is terrible, which they're not wrong, but it's just one of those things where I'll like kind of be watching and be like, okay, yeah, I get it. Yeah, this is bad. Like whatever. Like, and if they're going to, unless they're a little bit like cute about it or coy about it, like they actually turn into the vampires because the influencers are actually bloodsuckers, which would be a way better kind of situation. But, I mean, I don't know if they're going to go that far with it, but I just don't like the holier than thou, even if you're right, kind of like, message that'll probably be portrayed.
I feel like you're carrying over your disdain for The Social Dilemma in this conversation.
I don't like documentaries that yell at me. And
this isn't a documentary.
I feel like I'm going to get yelled at. I'm very insecure about these things.
Kevin, you said you're a big horror fan. What about the horror comedy?
Yeah, I worry about horror comedy when they come out the gate and say like, we're a horror comedy. Because some of the times what can happen with that is it just means that you're ashamed to be a horror movie and the characters in it, the writing on about it is like, isn't this stuff dumb? And I'm not even talking about Scary Movie. Like, I think Scary Movie loves horror movies, right? And so putting up all those pastiches and stuff like that is it's the Zucker Brothers way of talking about that. But I think like a Babysitter kind of, sort of, like that McGee thing, or like you said, like a Zombievers, right? Like that might like be being like, aren't horror movies stupid? And like, no, I fucking love. Oh, sorry, I don't know if we could swear on this podcast.
Oh, you can.
Okay, I fucking love horror movies, so I'm laughing with them. And I think you mentioned Ready or Not, which is a great one, and not to do the whole segueing thing, but like Scream, another one. And what the difference with those movies is they're like, no, we're horror films and we're funny, because good horror understands that you need to laugh, right? Like Poltergeist, one of my favorite horror movies of all time, some of the funniest sequences happen in that movie, right? And I think I can go more into that later too, but I think like horror comedies, it's like I'll watch with reservation, because if you're making fun of me for liking horror, I'm not on board. But if you're like, isn't this crazy? I'm like, yes, then I'm totally in.
And let's put a pin in that until we get to the Scream conversation,
Sure.
because you're going exactly where I think we need to, especially when we talk about one of the supporting characters in Scream, who is really the voice for, I think, everything you just said. But let's jump into another ridiculous movie that was just announced today. This one is a stoner superhero movie where those who smoke a certain kind of weed become superheroes. The three people attached to it are Andy Samberg, Common, and Craig Robinson. Discuss.
This is Project Power, isn't it? Like, kind of,
it's way safer.
I mean, I love the people involved, but this is like, Project Power with weed. I mean, I'm in, like, because that's
so good.
But
is the Lonely Island attached to be produced?
I don't know that the Lonely Island is attached. I didn't go that deep into it, to be honest, but I wouldn't be surprised. Right. And also, when you have like Craig Robinson involved, maybe he's the only link I'm making to this, but I'm thinking about like Seth Rogen and his crew coming in at some point. Like if this is like a This Is the End type film, then I'm totally into that, because that movie's ridiculous.
I think though that like if you Palm Springs, have you the most recent Lonely Island thing? Has me very excited for the future of those boys, because it feels like they're maturing along with us a little bit. Like they started out with Lazy Sunday when I was in high school, and I like memorized every lyric to that rap from SNL, right? With him and Chris Parnell. And it's so silly and stupid to see Palm Springs, which is like a really good, I think, mature comedy take on like depression and existentials and stuff like that. I think they could do smart stuff with a dumb premise like this. That has me super excited. So who knows?
All that, I'm right there with you. I just want them to use I'm on a boat somewhere.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Maybe you turn into a boat if you smoke the right strain. And
or maybe it's like Titanic 2. All right. So the next ridiculous movie, because apparently that's where we're at in the outline right now, is about Borat 2. So Borat 2 news just dropped like back to back. I should just kept yelling back. But anyway, the film title that we announced last week was incorrect, apparently. So thanks.
I saw that today. I was like,
that was great.
Discrepancy.
Yeah. So the title is actually Borat subsequent movie film. Delivery of prodigious bride to American regime for make benefit once glorious nation of Kazakhstan. And it will be debuting on Amazon Prime opposite HBO Max's The Witches on October 23rd. But the trailer is absolutely ridiculous. Just go out and watch that, because it's typical Borat. Sean, you're crying.
And it just happens because I just start thinking about things in the first Borat, and there's just a nude fight scene that is one of the everyone knows this, so I don't need to like go over this, but that was just like this great comedy that put a mirror up to America and said, this is what you look like right now. And holy shit, do we need that right now? Like we need to have that, look at ourselves, be very upset, be angry, and then also just laugh ourselves to death with it. That really should be like everything we go for there.
Kevin, part of this, I don't know if you have read anything about where they think this story is going, but apparently there was a push to get it out before the presidential election. And of course, you see part of that in the trailer where there was Borat dressed up as Donald Trump trying to deliver his daughter to Mike Pence at the Conservative Political Action Committee last year. So there's also rumors that there's going to be discussion of
that was at CPAC. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, that was at CPAC. So there's also rumors that there will be a discussion or something about Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump in the relationship. So is this the movie that we need to heal America right now?
Yes. Oh, that's for Kevin, but yes.
I think every other like bombshell that that people have tried to drop in timing with the election has just been like, who cares? This guy sucks, and the people who like him don't really care about that, right? Like he raped another person, and people are like, whatever, we're just gonna sweep right over that, right? Or be like, just wait till you read Comey's next book, and people would be like, we hate reading, so no. And then like whatever, right?
The Guy at the Movies podcast with Joe and Sean and guest Kevin does not endorse any particular candidate on the air right now, and we support you for all the views.
Nor do I. I hate both. What I am saying is that
Kevin is now going into a different angle, and we're not even supporting that one. So
I'm saying don't vote. No, I'm saying if there's one person that could drop a bombshell in a way that would make people be like, oh, I actually changed my mind about this. It's Borat.
Barbara Walters. Oh,
it's unfortunately Borat. I think he's going to be the one that people be like laughing along, be like, yeah, this is hilarious. And then it'll be like, oh. And then a great awakening will happen.
Hey, if that's what it takes, I'm in. I'm
psyched.
I'm very excited for it. So we move from Kazakhstan to France with this next film. It's an adaptation of the French thriller My Son, which is being adapted into an English language film with James McAvoy and Claire Foy set to star. What really excites me about this, though, I didn't know this about The Caller or about My Son, is that so McAvoy will get the basic idea of the story, and he'll get the premise of it. The story is centered around his son going missing. He travels to the town where his ex-wife lives in search of answers. He will not receive a full script, and most of the film will be improvised by him. It's the same way that the French edition was filmed. Kevin, does this excite you at all? It's such a different take on a film.
The premise of the film sounds odd, the French version of that. And then I have like a sticking point. I've complained to Sean many times. Sean will often get texts from me at like 2 a.m. being like, I hate this film and let me tell you why. And we usually do it in a group chat with one other person who doesn't watch movies, and it's really fun for him to just be left out. But one of my big gripes is when we make American remakes of films, because we're worried that Americans don't want to read. And I know I just made that joke about how we don't read, but I think we do for real. I think that we like cut us some slack, and maybe if we could get some kind of like better foreign film mass market in our own country, it would be really awesome. Because so much of the time what we get is a watered down version of from our perspective, which will like kind of shift where it's coming from sometimes. And so I'm definitely pumped to check out this improvised French film at some point. And James McAvoy is fine, but like I'll probably stick with the original.
Yeah, I totally understand that. Sean, what about you? I mean, Parasite obviously being the biggest foreign film that came into the U.S. and did well, obviously won an Oscar, but did well with subtitles. Are we kind of on the precipice of like a new, foreign film influx into the unopened theaters, or are you in support of this film as well being remade?
Well, I mean, I really love Parasite, but I know Kevin agrees with me on this take I'm about to give. But like, how much better would it be as like an American version?
Yeah,
of, like, glasses and everything.
Yeah,
no.
But speaking English.
Truly, I mean, I obviously agree with everything Kevin said. The foreign film market, like, I don't know that something's a foreign film. I mean, I was someone that this year watched Downhill and Force Majeure, and I'm like, oh yeah, they took Force Majeure and they just did everything wrong with it. And I like everything wrong with it. And
I liked Downhill. It wasn't the greatest, but it was just fine.
Have you seen Force Majeure?
Oh,
no.
We were friends.
So,
and that's the point. And not the point, but like Downhill can be great. And I'm not trying to take anything away from Downhill. But when I saw Force Majeure, it's like a whole nother beast, because it's coming from another country's perspective, which I think like immediately makes it a little bit more interesting in some ways.
I think that makes sense. What if another country like South Korea or France took She's All That and remade it? Do you think that like going the opposite way, it would be good? The
Freddie Prinze vehicle?
Yeah, the Freddie Prinze vehicle.
That's exactly what's happening. Right?
That'd be great. What? I think that's cooler, to be honest. Maybe.
What's really happening is that the Rachel Lee Cook and Freddie Prinze Jr. movie from 1999, She's All That, is getting the remake treatment with He's All That, which is just going to gender flip here. And Tanner Buchanan from Cobra Kai, which has found new life on Netflix, it seems, is going to star. He'll play the lead character, which I believe was Rachel Lee Cook's character, but because it's gender flopped or flipped, he'll play. Let me just double check. I'm making sure I'm saying this right. Yeah, he'll play the lead in the gender flip film, which will be told from a teenage influencer's point of view. Influencer again, which is Addison Rae, while she's going to try to take Buchanan from loser to prom king. Discuss.
Cobra Kai is a spectacular series. Cobra Kai is wonderful. Everyone should watch Cobra Kai. Cobra Kai is not good for its performances. It does not have good performances. So if their one link is that it's like, from one of the people that acted in Cobra Kai, I'll be like, oh boy, like not exactly that for me. Obviously, this is a remake. Watch the original. We don't need the gender flop situation. I don't think they're trying to be clever with something there. It doesn't work. I really don't think it works to a point where it might be offensive. I mean, I'm not completely against remakes. If you're doing something different, if you're doing something cool, if you're doing something interesting, like go for it. This doesn't seem like it's doing any of that. Who knows? It could win Best Picture in a couple of years, but right now I'm looking at this and I'm not really having it.
This is going to become a streamer movie.
Yeah.
That's my opinion.
Yeah.
Kevin, anything on this one, or shall we move on to our final story before our Scream Watch?
I thought you were talking about She's the Man for a while, and I was pumped to talk about 12th Night and Amanda Bynes, but, well, I was wrong. I haven't seen She's All That, so we can move right on.
Really? That's actually a pretty solid 1999 or 1990s movie, I would say. Maybe I'm wrong on that one. But anyway, one other film that we're getting is from Amazon Studios, who I'm reading my original story of this because I forgot to put notes on this. And instead of saying acquired, I wrote Amazon Studios has quirked the upcoming action film Head of State. So it's an original idea that was pitched by John Cena and Idris Elba. Of course, they are going to be in the Suicide Squad coming up. John Cena also getting a spinoff on HBO Max with the Peacemaker series. It's really kind of fascinating that he's blowing up into an actor because I think he's stiff as hell. But apparently they noticed the chemistry. They pitched this original idea, which doesn't have a plot yet, or at least one that's not released. But Idris Elba and John Cena, are we into that, Kevin?
Nah, this feels like a cash grab, right? It just feels like hey, make all the money in the world, John Cena and Idris Elba. You're very talented at what you do. I think John Cena has done a good job of realizing that he can be the number 2 Rock if you want a wrestler type in your movie. I think he's got to look over his back, unfortunately, because what's his face is coming up hot.
Dave Bautista.
Yeah, and but also like turning Dave Bautista. I think Villeneuve is going to turn Bautista into like a beautiful, polished character actor that's just going to disappear into these weird roles. And I'm here for it, and I'm ready to watch him leap over John Cena. Who
A24 films, here he comes.
Yeah, just give it a year, and I think. Yeah, I don't know. I think they both for me, Idris Elba. I was like, all right, bub. When he was the bad guy in Hobbs versus Shaw, which I forgot I watched this year. I was like, okay, so it's just, like, for me, when there comes a point when you reach like Rock status as a star, where like it's like, okay, you're literally taking whatever role is coming because you're getting all of the roles and they're making you lots of money. So I want to see The Rock go back and do something he's passionate about. I want to see John Cena figure out what he's passionate about maybe at some point. And Idris Elba too, like he could deliver a great performance. He could what the problem is? And I'm sorry, I'll stop rambling. But the two of those people, Idris Elba can phone in a performance really easily. And I think we've been seeing some phone-ins lately where it's like, all right, let's see come on, man. Let's go.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I mean, hey, The Rock has been trying to deliver his passion project, but they just removed Black Adam from the entire release calendar. Sean, you as the number one fan of the Fast and Furious franchise, and what are your thoughts on this?
Oh boy, this one seems interesting. I mean, I look at it and it's like it's Idris, and so like you just said, he can phone in read from the phone book and still be great, still be fun. I mean, he literally was able to sell himself as the villain by saying the line "genocide, schmenocide" with a straight face. So already, best actor right there. I think John Cena is funny. I don't think John Cena has ever given anything that resembles a full performance in anything. I think he's made me laugh. All right, so if he makes me laugh, Idris does some cool stuff. I could get down on that. Now, I would love to see, now you got me thinking about it, and I'd rather see Idris Elba and Dave Bautista. Not to just be totally mean to John Cena, but that would actually be a great one, because I know something about Bautista is he is incredibly funny. We saw it in Guardians, but My Spy was a movie you could watch because of Dave Bautista.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Because of Dave Bautista. But it was just one of those things where it's like, he is selling this very well, like to a point where I like that movie way more than I really should have expected to, or in any general fashion. So I look at this and I think, you know what, go ahead, have fun with an action movie. It'll be a punch 'em up. Make sure a director that's a stunt coordinator does it so there's good action, and then let's just go home and watch something else after.
Head of State makes me think that it's something obviously related to like politics, and maybe it's something with them in the CIA or the Secret Service, or, I could see Idris Elba playing the villain again, because I think he can do that pretty well. I don't think, because we know that John Cena has that sort of like humorous side to him, I don't know that I would see him sold as a villain right now.
Here's what I got. Have you seen Dave? Do you know what Dave is?
I do know what Dave is.
Okay. What if they did Dave and Idris Elba is president and he gets sick and they're like, John Cena, you look exactly like Idris Elba. We need you to play his body double. No blackface or anything.
I was going to say, you are traipsing under some dangerous.
No. We can flip it if you want, if that makes you easier. So John Cena gets sick and they're like, Idris Elba, we need you to be John Cena as president. Everybody's just like, yeah, sure, okay, whatever. No guns, no action.
That's something we should look up. Let me Google that.
Wait, hold on. What is this? Email from Amazon Studios, cease and desist. All right. So, yeah, that should be an interesting movie. I think maybe we're going to get a good performance out of John Cena in the Suicide Squad, which is maybe why they're moving forward with this Peacemaker series. But I do think that because the character, I think, has been described as like a dickhead Captain America, that we're probably going to get more of that like humorous side of him. And
I think so. I watched that whole Suicide Squad event, and when I finished it, I was like, man, I guess I am starved for movie content or something. I watched this whole thing, this whole Zoom call.
Yeah. I'm excited for that movie. I'm excited for James Gunn to take it in a different direction. So we'll see.
Me too.
All right. So time has come. Sean revealed to me weeks ago that he has never seen any of the Scream movies. And this came about because every week we have had a Scream update, because the cast list is 347 people long. And everyone is trying to figure out what the film is going to be about. I have a theory on where this is going, but I'm not going to talk about Scream 5 until we get through Scream 4 in 4 weeks. However, let's talk about Scream. For those of you who are not familiar, the synopsis is: a peaceful town in California turns into a bloodbath when a masked killer haunts the town, Ghostface. Sidney Prescott, a young teenage girl played by Neve Campbell, whose mother was killed a year before, becomes the target of the masked killer. Her boyfriend, Billy Loomis, becomes the main suspect along with Sidney's father. Local tabloid news reporter Gail Weathers, Courtney Cox, was she Courtney Cox Arquette at this point? Because they got married. They got married after the first one and then divorced before the fourth one, I think.
But didn't they meet on the set of the first one?
Maybe.
I think so.
And Woodsboro's deputy Dwight Dewey Riley, David Arquette, investigate and try to figure out who the killer is and if it's the same person who killed Sid's mom the year before. I'm going to Sean first for this. Kevin, you also watched it for the first time, so this is going to be fun for me. Sean, reactions.
Wow, did I love this. And, I should just give a little bit of a backstory on I was always scared of scary movies, and my parents weren't really big on influencing scary movies. So I just kind of grew up thinking I probably don't like scary movies. And then I've started to watch some of the modern ones. So now I've started to go backwards, and that's why Scream never entered my purview. So then I watched this first one and scared a little bit here and there. Did I have a lot of fun? Yes. And I think that we see here there's this, because Wes Craven, I've seen Last House on the Left oddly before Scream, but that one was this horrific gore show that left me deeply disturbed. And then this is just this completely fun, yet still very suspenseful. Wes knows how to put an environment in suspense just perfectly well. Like the scene in the bathroom where the boots come down off of the underneath the stalls of the bathroom. I couldn't get over how good that was done. And I look at each part of it and I see to myself that this is a 90s movie. And in the best compliments possible, this is a delightfully 90s movie. The violence is held back a little bit, but there's still enough that it leaves you disturbed. I'm sort of like just like falling over myself going through this. But one of the, we'll talk about how this film had fun with the horror movie cliches, especially like, Outright at one point. But it also has fun because, there's a red herring. And, they have fun with that red herring. I don't know if I want to spoil Scream or not, but the red herring turns out to be the killer. And I kind of loved that because I'm thinking like, oh, wait, he's suspected. So that's not going to be him. And I genuinely thought that. And I was kind of blown up by it. I really just think this movie turns on itself quite a bit. It takes the PTSD traumatic survivor. Well, she wasn't a survivor of a murder, but it takes that sort of thing to a different level where she's not the survivor of the murder, but she has this in her past. So she's kind of freaked out by murders going on. And survivor of the murder. I just realized that doesn't make any sense. Survivor of an attack.
Yeah, but hey, spoiler alert, there's 4 films and she's the lead in all of them. So she's going to be surviving some attack.
She'll be making it throughout. Oh my goodness, did I really just love this movie? Maybe I'll get my thoughts better after we hear from Kevin, because right now I feel like I'm tripping over my tongue.
Kevin, hit me.
Should I give my horror backstory real quick too? And
go for it. Yeah.
I was the same. I was a scaredy cat with overprotective parents who were like, can't watch scary movies. I have a vivid memory of in one baseball postseason, there was a ad for a trailer of House on Haunted Hill that just kept on playing. And I was so terrified of that movie without ever having seen it. Or maybe it was 13 Ghosts, one of those movies, right? But somehow, some way I kept getting older, I guess, and it's become my favorite genre, to be honest. I think I do a lot of championing. I can't say the word. I will die on the hill of horror movies because I think that they have always been important and know exactly what's going on at the times that they're made. I think that people belittle them a lot, and I think that they're always finding a new way to couch it. We were talking about horror comedies before, right? This is a horror, but not those horrors, right? And then now it's elevated horror, which I love the movies, but I hate the term that Tumblr made up because it's those horror movies are ones that we can like, and these ones are ones we disdain. Snoots. Horror is horror, and this movie gets that in a beautiful way because there were multiple points throughout the film, which I was damn, out loud of how good the movie works, right? Let's talk about the first scene real quick. It's iconic for a reason. It's pastiche to death. I think I knew almost all of the beats of this movie without ever having seen it, because partly I think I got it confused with I Still Know What You Did Last Summer, which I would like to talk about later, because I think that movie is made around the same time and totally misses the point that this movie very much gets. Right. And that one's trying to be no, we're serious. And it's this is a dumb story, actually. And this movie is we're having fun with it. And then once you peel back the layers, it was actually one of the better stories of Believe All Women, of gaslighting as a horror, of all of these tropes that we see throughout. The way that they did that with Courtney Cox and that fight scene, the scene after she punches her in the face, right? And she goes up to her and she's like, look, I'm sorry. And Courtney Cox is your mom was a liar. And here's all the facts that I got. It cracks the movie open in a way where I don't think I was selling it short, but I was oh, this movie is fully aware of itself. It knows how good it is. It knows that it's being helmed by Wes Craven, who is a horror master, right? And
R.I.P.
Rest in peace, man. Rest in pieces, Wes. And he knows it, right? Many of the jokes in this movie are at the expense of Nightmare on Elm Street, right? Steve Ulrich looks exactly like Johnny Depp in Nightmare on Elm Street, to a point where it's oh, that can't be a mistake. The movie is so smart, it made me say, that's definitely not dumb, that's intentional, a couple of times, right? And that's when you know it's a good film.
Well, and let's also talk about Matthew Lillard's character. I'm freaking dying, man. Like
the most deliciously overacted, kind of ending that I've ever seen from someone. And, it's Lillard, so he overacts the best you can imagine. And I'm not even saying this totally as an insult. I'm saying this is that kind of sells it. He's like the really dumb, kind of screwed up friend, and then he gets stabbed a bunch, so he's gonna act nuts. And it sort of balances Skeet's very evil, oh boy, and he's just kind of hamming it up that way. And I love that there's
it was my note.
Is that your Skeet? That's a sentence.
Skeet. So we have to talk about Randy, though, who is played by Jamie Kennedy, because Jamie Kennedy, I think, is the crux of the film in a lot of ways, because he is the one that communicates, I think, what Wes Craven was going for in kind of making fun of horror in a way, but also knowing what horror is, right? Like he took the general structure that we all know. So think about, horror movies that you saw back from the 70s or the 80s, and it's like, no, don't go in there, or of course she's going to trip on that branch or whatever. And they play with that here. And you have Jamie Kennedy, who is sort of narrating the whole film through, in a sense, not traditionally, but saying like, oh no, that's the first rule of blah, blah, or like, hey, shoot him in the head twice to make sure he's dead. Like that type of stuff. Mm-hmm. What did you guys think of that? And Kevin, I'm going to go to you first, because I think that's definitely kind of what you were getting towards a little bit earlier when we were talking about comedy horror.
Yeah, I think it's brilliant on Craven's part to do that. I think it's like, we will say we know the rules of horror films to give us a little bit of power over horror films, which can really scare us. And like other films are great, but they don't give you an intense physical reaction all of the time. Maybe a really good comedy if you have a gut-busting laugh, but horror films are this unique brand that are not only designed to like be a good film, but be designed to get elicit an actual response from your body, right? And so Wes Craven, I think with Scream is like, okay, cue rules, right? You've seen all these slashers, and yeah, they follow a lot of things. Here's what scares you, actually. And he does that by making the first scene gripping, intense, and terrifying. And Sean, you said earlier, it was the 90s. They ooh, I just pinched something in my neck. Ah! Sean, I'm gonna power through. Sean, you said it was something in the 90s and where they were like shy away from some of the stuff. And that first scene where he holds Drew Barrymore and Ghostface and then like stabs the knife into her is visceral, and you're there. And it's Wes Craven, in my opinion, saying like, you think you're so cool with what you know about your horror movies. Look at this upsetting image. And then he shows you another upsetting image of her hanging from the tree, and you're like, oh God. And then he's like, well, we're having fun here, right? And he laugh harder than you laugh, because I think Spielberg got this too. Like, your scary parts have to be scary, and to do so, you have to make your light parts you want to be there for, parts where you are laughing and with those people and feeling a part of that clique. Otherwise, you're just, when they die, you're going to be like, yeah, whatever, I'm not scared. Well, I hated you anyway, right?
Sean, did you enjoy that sort of angle that it took with Jamie Kennedy's focus on the rules of a horror film?
Well, it's the first time they were ever said. Like, now they're cliche and they're said everywhere and all the time, and like that's a new thing. But I think at that point, when Jamie Kennedy stood up and said the rules of the horror movie, people were probably watching that being like, oh yeah, that is true. Oh yeah, that's right. I think there's like levels with the Jamie Kennedy where everyone leaves, but he still wants to watch the horror movie and he's still involved, where I just think that's just a brilliant stroke of genius, because he's just kind of like, look behind you. And then that set piece is my favorite because the tape is on delay and we see it later on delay. It's both hysterical and terrifying because you're like, wait, where is he now? I love that little setup. I think that there's something I kind of want to bring up here, and this is going to be an interesting take that I have, where we're talking about the horror comedy. And a lot of the times I look at this and I say to myself that horror and comedy, not the exact same, very, very close to each other. And I think it's because these are the two types of films where you are reacting instantly in a certain type of way. There are times where I am seeing a straight up horror and I'm seeing like a terrifying part of it, And I'm laughing, not because I'm watching Drew Barrymore get murdered, but I'm laughing because I'm so uncomfortable and so terrified about it. I'm like, whoa. And I start to like let out a guttural laugh, just out of sheer terror.
Yeah.
And so I wonder, like, when we talked about the horror comedy, I think that, I'm sure there'll be a horror movie that disputes me on this. I'm sure there'll be a horror movie that disputes me on this,
Like
but they're very similar.
Yeah,
Totally
I'm with
agree.
you there.
Yeah. Oh, I thought I would get some money back. Okay.
I think also like people have what you're afraid of is subjective, and what you find funny is subjective too, right? So a horror movie that works for somebody isn't going to work for everyone.
Yeah, I love, I always hear from these people, like, I remember this when I was really young. Like, one of the first horror movies I saw was The Shining. And so, I couldn't sleep for 10 days. And then, like, I would tell, like, my friends who were all really cool and stuff like that and saw all the horror movies. I was like, and I'd be like, yeah, I just saw The Shining. And they're like, that's not scary. I'm like, yes. I look now as an adult and I'm like, Shining's the scariest damn
No, they were lying to you, Sean.
They better have been, because it hurt my feelings.
I think this also, though, is a gateway film for horror in a lot of ways. And I think that going back to the Jamie Kennedy conversation, but what Sean was just saying as well, I think that's Wes Craven's intent with this film is, we're going to shock you at the beginning, like you said, Kevin, but then we're going to kind of break down what a horror film looks like and walk you through it in a lot of ways by introducing you to a new character that you can then take on as sort of your younger generation's character, which will get me to my next question in a second. But it this isn't necessarily a spoiler for feature films, but if this one focuses on the rules of horror, what do you think the second one focuses on?
The rules of the sequel.
So follow that through, right? You get the rules of a trilogy. You get the rules of like what happens when you come back after so long and you try to like remake it and introduce new characters.
Is this the rules of the reboot, you think, in the fifth one?
Well, the fourth
that's
one was
exactly what I
think.
Go ahead.
Oh, I thought so if we're thinking that 3 is the rules of the trilogy, so 4th would be the rules of the reboot, right? Or
yeah, I don't quite have this all clear in my head, but 4 and 5 I think that's where they're going with it.
Yeah.
I think 4 was supposed to be sort of like the wrap up and the handoff, and I don't know that necessarily worked well. Yeah. But I think what we're going to get now is, taking not necessarily a remake, right? But we're going to introduce modern technology, modern items, modern, feelings, the modern world to this story that at this point is 24 years old. Right. And by the time Scream comes out, it'll be 20, it's not 20 until 2022, I don't think. So, 26 years later. Mm-hmm. So I'm pumped for where this is going. I think I'm very interested to see how you guys feel about the upcoming films, because they're not met with the same enthusiasm that the first one is, which is normal, I guess. Mm-hmm. But especially the third one, that's one that I actually really like, and people hate it. So, which again is natural for me. But how
I'm definitely watching them all.
Yeah, definitely. I highly encourage you. What do you think about Ghostface as a killer? So Ghostface is, of course, the white mask with the long mouth, made famous in Scream, made, I think, even more famous by like the dummy version of it in Scary Movie. But it has become synonymous with $5 masks at CBS and Rite Aid. But in addition to that, I was just looking around last night when I was doing some research on Ghostface, and one of the things that I noticed was he's now paired with toys of Chucky, with toys of Freddy Krueger, with toys of Michael Myers and Jason. Mm. So he's definitely in that pantheon of, those evil characters that dominated the horror movie landscape for so long. Do you consider Ghostface one of those? And I don't know if that's too early to ask because you've only seen one movie, but
I think the mask is bigger than who's behind it. And I don't know how the other movies go, but oh yeah, cool, Skeet was the killer. I don't really care. Or oh, cool, Lillard was also the killer. I don't really care. You don't. Skeet's face isn't what's freaking you out, or Lillard's face isn't what's freaking you out. It's the face of the ghost. And so
the unknown.
In the next few, the ghost face, yes. In the next few, you're gonna still see that ghost face, and that's gonna be like it goes further than any of the other. Freddy Krueger. You can't have Freddy Krueger without Freddy Krueger. You can't have, but like with the ghost face, that could be passed on forever and ever and ever. And every single time you see that face with a knife or something, or really just standing there, really just running around, it's gonna be scary. Maybe like it feels scary in Scream. That might just be because I knew about Ghostface before I watched Scream. I can't imagine what it was like for those audiences the first time, like, you know, how they were able to make the connection of like, yeah, no, that's bad. But it does seem like it's not angry. It's not a like, you know, really like, you know, going to get you kind of like facial expression. It's just, you know, like a like an Edvard Munch's The Scream, which I'm sure they kind of developed it after. And it's just there. And then because of all the actions, because of everything, and then because of the mystery, that's where things got a little bit crazy with it. And that's why it's become so iconic.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Kevin, what do you think about that?
I was scared, Sean, because I thought we were going to completely agree, but then I got excited because I think I have the exact opposite take as you here. I think what Wes Craven, I'm going to speak on behalf of Wes because he's dead and he can't say I'm wrong. And so I think what he has done here, it has shown us, is that the mask is the least thing, is the thing that matters least at all, right? And it's a dollar store Halloween mask. It's some throwaway, no name BS mask that we picked up at Spirit of Halloween. What we are really afraid of is the fact that we don't know who is under the mask. In the first scene, the thing that is most frightening is when the mask gets lifted up and we don't see, and we see the look on Drew Barrymore's face. Horror is always playing with reactions that's scarier than the thing you're looking at. Jaws, they were like, this shark looks so shitty. We're going to have to define that horror is things you're scared of when you can't see it more than when you can, because we got to figure out a way to hide that shark, right? And so Ghostface is literally does not matter. All we do is see the mask, and the mask is some throwaway thing that after a while allows us to like laugh when he shows up and kind of like be in on the joke almost, and still be terrified because we're not quite sure who's underneath doing that. And that's what's really scary. Is it our friends messing with us? Is it somebody we love taking down our family? Because I still don't really get what their motives were, to be honest, at the end. I think they're just kind of psychotic, right? And we're like, we love murders and we could get away with it. We're teenagers. That's actually way scarier than any mask you could buy, right? And I think the other joke is that like the Jason mask is just a hockey mask, right? Yeah. The Friday the 13th, I'm sorry, the Halloween mask is just an inside out Shatner mask, right? Painted white. Like these are not scary things on their own. It's what's underneath that we're frightened of. And so I think in a way, Ghostface is in the pantheon because he's iconic, because we all remember it. But I think the point is the opposite, where which is kind of cool.
I agree with you there. I can settle for that. You know,
I totally agree with that. I want to go back to what I was mentioning earlier about kind of how the trajectory of these films. So I don't think it's a big spoiler to talk about this, but you know, of course, the second one is this rules of the sequel, and that's kind of where the series
is. It called Stab?
Is what called Stab?
Isn't there like a fake movie about Scream in Scream 2 called Stab? Yeah, that's one of my favorite things about film.
Yeah, it'll get pretty interesting as you go on. Cool. But 2011's Scream 4 played with the remake idea, and there's a really interesting article that I found a while ago on Forbes, of all places. But it's Travis Bean is the writer, and he said that, you know, now that Wes Craven's dead, and he had been in talks to do a Scream 5 and a Scream 6 at some point before he died, so they were going to keep going, that now you have two new writers coming in, and I believe it's the writers from Ready or Not that are doing it. So Matt Bettinelli, Elpin, and Tyler Gillette. But that's kind of what this guy's saying. He said, so how do they respond to the kind of pressure to live up to Wes Craven's entire franchise output by satirizing the pressure, of course? I'm guessing the new mass killer of Scream 5 will follow the rules of a horror reboot. And it's given them a second life by a new young up-and-coming filmmakers. And the new killer could become a manifestation of that trend. So I think it's kind of cool to stick with like the original impetus for these films in a way. And, you know, see where they can take it, because the other piece of this, of course, is that the studio wants it to be successful so they can keep going with more and more. And Neve Campbell loves that paycheck, right? Like when Kevin Spacey destroyed House of Cards and killed her at the end of season 5, it was, or 4, whatever it was all over for her.
I don't think I even made it to that season.
I see on our outline we have the question: where does Wes Craven rank in the Horror Hall of Fame, or Hall of Mame, as someone put?
I threw that in there. I wanted to pick your brains about that. Sorry if I'm not supposed to.
No. How dare you?
You touched his notes.
I'm just curious because I love him and he's had some real bangers. He's got a lot of misses as well, and I think people kind of find him a little hokey sometimes. I think they think like how Nightmare on Elm Street went off the rails and became kind of campy. They equate to the same way they equate like England with that. I think like Wes Craven gets a little bit of that as well.
I think Wes Craven is one of the better. And the reason I say that is because I think that he was a smart filmmaker in the stories that he was trying to tell. And you alluded to that earlier with the story of Neve Campbell's character and Courtney Cox's characters in this. And he was on the forefront of, a female-led franchise back in 1996, which was not something that, unfortunately, it's still something that's not incredibly common. But he really does more than just horror and more than just stabbing and killing and crazy characters, but there's a reason behind them, and I think he does that better than any.
And I think his roots, like you're saying, like unfortunately one of the places that you saw the most female-led movies in any genre was horror, because a huge subgenre of that is the revenge plot, right? And he started out with Last House on the Left, Hills Have Eyes, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which are all, oh no, I'm sorry, that's Tobe Hooper, but he was involved with it, that a little bit too, I remember. And like all of these like 70s grindy things that are about revenge, essentially, right? Yeah. And you see that to some extent here in the final scene too.
Sean, what are your thoughts on him?
I personally think from what I've seen, he's great. I think he's, he goes from classic to making this franchise in the modern era. And yes, of course, he has the bumps. If we're looking at the top horror director, this is where, I have a little bit of trouble because, I'm still working my way through old scary movies. And so I don't know if I, know too many established horror directors like him. So at that point, I would put him there. I mean, the one you could only laugh at me for as I think about it, and I don't think this is considered a horror director, but the only one I could think of is Hitchcock, which I don't really consider him horror. He is more suspense. He's more thriller. So, I don't think you could really put him on there. Literally the goriest he was a black and white movie where the stabbing wasn't shown. And so I, don't think that he'd be up there. So at that point, I'm okay with Craven being at the top there. I think I won't lose sleep putting him there without a doubt.
I'm right there with you. I totally agree. I'm excited again to hear your thoughts on Scream 2 moving forward and the rest of the series. But, you mentioned some clunkers, Kevin. The first one that came to mind was that Cursed movie, like the werewolf one. Mm-hmm. And I remember seeing that in theaters. And I think that came out when I was like a teenager or something. And I remember seeing it being like, oh, God, this is not good. I don't even remember. Joshua Jackson was in that, I think.
Oof. Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
And I mean, you're gonna have clunkers with horror, right? Yeah, I would put him up there towards my top. I would say I think I have Tobe Hooper is still my number one of all time. Nobody makes me feel more uncomfortable and bad about myself after a film than him. And I think like Cronenberg does incredible things with body horror that really freak me out. So he'd be up there too. And actually, Peter Jackson, pretty high up on my list. He started out as one of the goriest directors of all time. Check out like Brain Dead, or check out some of his stuff that he was making when it was just like him putting all of New Zealand on his back with like a little high camera or whatever. He's incredible too.
Not to dwell on Cursed and sidetrack us, but I just looked up the full cast and it had a lot of names in it. Christina Ricci, Jesse Eisenberg, Joshua Jackson, Maya, Milo Ventimiglia, Shannon Elizabeth, Portia de Rossi, Nick Offerman, Judy Greer, Scott Baio, Michael Rosenbaum, Lex Luthor, Lance Bass, Craig Kilborn, Chris Johnson.
Nick Offerman's in it too?
Nick Offerman's in it too.
Hell out of this movie.
I know. I'm like, now I need to go back. Apparently it's on Hulu.
Oh, perfect. I don't have to pay.
So I look forward to discussing that next week as well. All right, so we are wrapping up here. What we'd like to do at the end is talk about what's coming out this week, and we are recording on Tuesday. Podcast is coming out on Wednesday, but welcome to Blumhouse. The first 2 films are released on Amazon Prime today, The Lie and Black Box. Hubie Halloween comes out on Wednesday, so today if you're listening, on Netflix. Honest Thief was supposed to hit theaters on Friday, but I learned late tonight that it is being pushed to next week, hopefully. That is the Liam Neeson film. The War with Grandpa, which is Robert De Niro, not Sean Levy, Eugene Levy, all kinds of people, is supposed to go to theaters Friday, should they still be open. And then the 40-year-old version on Netflix is on Friday. I don't know what that is.
That looks like the best of the crop, actually. I'm really excited about that one.
Interesting.
Yeah, this one I heard it's like about I think a 40-year-old rapper trying to make it into the business, if you get a synopsis going. But this has been one that played at the festivals before, and people were loving it.
This woman, she's a 40-ish black playwright living in New York City who won a 30 under 30 award and is now teaching like what looks like remedial intro to playwright stuff at a school. And then she tries to retell her story by getting into the like SoundCloud rap game and make a mixtape. And it looks actually really good.
Yeah,
it looks really smart. Yeah, it's definitely, I think, like probably the smartest of the bunch being released in that group that you just said.
Well, Hubie Halloween, then that one probably.
I mean, yeah, that goes without saying. Sorry, I thought that was
close second. Yeah. All right, awesome, Kevin. We can't thank you enough for being here. Where can people find you online?
Thank you so much. I recently got suspended from Twitter, so you can't find me there. But you can find me on Letterboxd, speaking of movies, at KevBot9000. That'd be great. I'm just a middle school teacher, so I don't really have too much to plug here. I would say listen to this show and support your movies and follow me on Letterboxd.
I ask why you got suspended from Twitter?
I'm proud of why it was. It was when Skip Bayless was being a jerk about Dak Prescott having depression and anxiety. And I said some things like, hey, Skip Bayless, why don't you eat shit next time you're on air? And they said, that's a threat. And I said, I just suggested he do it himself. I won't be there. And to be honest, right now, it's better for me to be off Twitter. So,
well, Twitter, you'll be happy to know that in the past week they came out and said that they take threats really seriously, and they're not going to stand for it all of a sudden.
Against middle school teachers, yeah, that's about it.
Fecal dietary requests that they really go after.
Yeah, they really like
that. Going after half the country, that's okay, but fecal dietary, like those are the tough ones.
That's what really gets
If you want to hear my thoughts on the Saw franchise, which I just watched, you could go to the Letterboxd and see that there.
Excellent. I'm doing a Saw watch along at the end of the month, and Sean, you will be on that. And Kevin, maybe we have to talk about getting you on that too.
I would love nothing more. I have some thoughts on Saw.
One of my favorite horror series, by the way. For some of the films. Sean, where can people find you?
People can find me at Math Teacher Movies on Instagram. I do Monologue Mondays, What the Oscars Got Wrong Wednesdays, and Final Shot Fridays. And meanwhile, I also pepper in TV and movie reviews of the past and present.
You can also find me in the comments of those posts that he puts out.
Frequently.
That's gotten tighter, that promotion there.
I'm getting a little better at it.
There you go.
I can't talk the rest of the time, but I got that.
Hey, right there with you. You can find me at Guy at the Movies on Instagram, guyatthemovies.com, Letterboxd, Twitter, all that fun stuff. And you can listen to this podcast wherever you get your podcast, Apple, Google, Stitcher, Spotify, Overcast or something, which we have a lot. Oh, okay. You're probably the one that keeps popping up then. I'm like, we have listeners on Overcast? It's you. Cool. And as a reminder, wear your damn mask, unlike some people that have been on TV recently. And Sean, registration, I think, may be over in a lot of states, but if it's not for voting, what do you want them to do?
Just Google how to vote. Like Google voter registration, then your state. I mean, honestly, look it up, get registered, and then just freaking vote. I get bored.
Let me go on the record and say voting is important. You should register to vote, and you should vote. I made a throwaway joke earlier. I don't want people thinking.
Kevin's fun with this, but he will be voting. All of us will be voting. You should vote.
The thoughts of KevBot9000 do not necessarily represent the thoughts of Math Teacher Movies and Guy at the Movies. I'll speed that up in the final cut of
There
this.
you go.
But,
Perfect.
all right. Hey, Kevin, once again, thanks for being here. Sean, we'll talk soon. And I will see you all later.
Thanks so much.